let us know by dropping the word replay in the comments. You are here for episode 5. We're already on episode 5 of Ask M&M Live. I am your moderator, Monique James from Renegade Creative Media Group, and I'm here with both M's today. We're so glad that Mignon is back with us. Last week she was out, but we're back. The team's back together today. Mignon is here from the Arizona Regional Economic Development Foundation, which is where you are watching this broadcast. Mark Schmidt from the Cochise College Small Business Development Center. And our guest this week is Mr. Billy Kovacs, who is the District Outreach Director for Congresswoman Ann Kirkpatrick's office. So welcome, everybody. We've all been kind of talking and chit-chatting behind the scenes before we went live. I'm glad to see everybody's faces and knowing that everybody is healthy and relatively sane, as I'm sure you all are trying to track and deal with all of the things that have been happening over the course of the week. So Mark, Mignon, do either of you have updates for us before we jump right into the conversation with Billy today?
Huge updates, but like I say, let's get Billy going here, and we can kind of at the end kind of update our updates, because I was really interested. Right. I was interested in the conversations we had before. How new forms of communication. And a lot of time, and he'd mentioned something that really struck my interest, as far as like, how we're communicating. And I think there's some really good ideas and things we need to be thinking about moving forward. And it's the communications in Congress is how they can vote via Zoom and platforms like this. Billy, maybe give us kind of an update on what's going on with that area.
And I just want to really thank Billy. Before he gets started, I've known Billy for a long time in lots of different capacities, and he is just always that person. No matter what time of day, you can text him and he gets a hold of you. So one of the things that Billy said early on too is it does not matter where you are. If Ann Kirkpatrick is if you're in her district or not, it doesn't matter. Billy is honestly there for everyone, and I can attest to that more times than anybody else. So again, Billy, I just really want to thank you and the Congresswoman for everything that you do for us.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you so much. And it's not just me. We have a 16-member staff. It seems big, but we're in 2 different states. We're going back and forth on legislative constituent issues. So our whole staff really is the mechanism that drives our office, for the Congresswoman. So want to just say shout out to them as well. We do a lot of constituent services work, and to date almost brought back just under $2 million back to constituents. So very excited about that, but really wanted to highlight that for our office. So yeah, with that, Mark brought up something that is sort of talked about right now in Congress is remote voting. That's one of the things that, we were going to see when Congress went, but fortunately that really didn't come to fruition, and partly because there was a call for that to be a bipartisan measure, and really that's what Nancy Pelosi is looking at right now in House leadership, is really go back to the drawing board and make that a bipartisan effort, so that remote voting provisions in there, though temporary, would be able to have the input of both Republicans and Democrats in that. And this is just a House measure. This isn't a Senate measure. But what that is able to do is that it allows committee work to start happening again. My member that I work for, Ann Kirkpatrick, is on appropriations. So huge part of the power of the purse and getting money into the districts and allocating money throughout the federal government. We really need to make sure that committee work that we've spent tireless efforts and time on over the past 6 to 8 months with our staff throughout the whole district, really to advocate for projects here in Arizona, but also throughout the country, to get that work done and pass those appropriations bills, so we can really work on some of the things that are the everyday non-stimulus stuff, but everyday workings of Congress. So hopefully we'll see that when Congress goes back. We don't think it's going to be next week. We think it's going to be the week after, around on the 10th. That remote voting provision, possibly come up and be voted on. And that is something that is historic. Like a lot of things happening right now, very historic for Congress to be able to vote from their districts. The mechanics of that are yet to be determined. They want to make sure they're secure, but also we really want to see, that be able to be pushed and voted on. So yeah, a little update on that for you, Mark.
Good. To me, I mean, our office, we use it a lot, but I can see us using it a lot more. Bob Mucci, who works for me, he's been working from home for the last 3 years. It makes no sense for him to drive an hour into work and then drive an hour home. That gives him 2 hours more a day to actually be working. So there's just a lot of things that make sense. From
and
this.
Getting. Yeah, and really, every bill, for everybody that's watching, every stimulus bill, and I said this earlier, behind the scenes, has been voted on by every single member and had to be approved by every single member. So they all said it's called unanimous consent. Everybody had a vote in the positive or the negative for that funding bill. And that's what's happened over the first stimulus and also the interim stimulus. We're probably going to see that in the second stimulus. But really, that's where that remote voting comes in, so that members can raise objections. They can vote on committee work, that smaller bills that might not have bipartisan support. Those things are going to be, those are on the back burner right now. And we can start to push some of that stuff that has really been in the works. So Congress can do its job.
An interesting thing is something I've always, whenever I'm meeting with legislatures and things like that, is I always want to try to help them solve problems rather than create more, and come to them with some solutions rather than complaining about problems. And you just very rarely see that, I bet. And it's kind of like I say, you're here to work for us, but we actually got to kind of work with you on
right.
some things.
Yeah, but, and a lot of the work that our office does is dialogue. It's not a one-way street for us. We get emails or requests in, or we go to meetings, and then we really start to build a little bit of background around a lot of these issues. We don't just openly support something, right away. We go into it. We have legislative staff and it's constituent staffs, and if you put together all the years of all the civil service that our staff has accumulated, it's hundreds of years. And it's really, our district director is Ron Barber, former congressman.
Yeah.
And he really does a good job of giving us that background that not a lot of people have. But he can contextualize the issues for the district. And some of us younger guys are able just to pepper in some newer information, but really having that support there is crucial for us to advocate for the district. And I think we've seen that through Ann's tenure in Southern Arizona, really advocating for the things that people need to see happen in Congress. And she did a good job. She's doing a good job.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the next round of funding that's coming out for small businesses and what's in that, and any advice that you can give the business owners that are out there listening?
Yeah, so right now that second funding bill really is kept under wraps. So we the thing that our office is allowed to do, and what mechanisms we're working through, is to advocate for things that we didn't see in the first bill. And through our outreach efforts, we have a COVID-19 task force. So every Wednesday we get on the phone with the primary care or the hospitals in Southern Arizona, and in Cochise. So we have Copper Queen on there. We have Cochise Health Department. We have Chiricahua Health in there as well. So Jonathan Melk's on that, and he double dips. So he's a small business guy and as well as a physician. And so we've really heard from them, and we have the chamber, SALC, so Ted Maxwell, I know you know him, and your local first. So we really started to ask them from the beginning, what aren't you seeing in these bills? Where is the shortfall in this? And we've accumulated a lot of information to start advocating for that in the second bill. And that's really what we're trying to do is, once again, all these offices are trying to figure out how to best serve the public, and especially small businesses. And that's really where we're trying to focus. So a letter that we just wrote on the 28th to the Treasury Department highlighted just that we saw in the first bill, and in Arizona as well. And I think people need to hear this, because this is how the shakeout really happened for Arizona. We actually received the fifth fewest number of PPP loans out of every 1,000 small businesses in the country.
Wow.
So think about that when we talk about the response and what we need to see in that second bill. That's huge for us. The second district has, if you look at the metrics, we have a ton of small businesses between 1 and 4 employees with, average sales under $500,000 that are really struggling. I got off the phone with the what was it, Tombstone Commerce, Chamber of Commerce, and she's really struggling down there as well because they live on tourism and small business, and are in those. They're not like Tucson where they can advocate for a share of federal dollars because they're over 100,000 or 500,000 people, or the state. They're really in that smaller area where they're looking to the county of saying, what do we do? And the county's looking to the state, and the state, as we've seen, has really been slower to respond in some of these areas to get the aid that's necessary. So that's really what we're trying to package and advocate for in that second bill, or even in that interim funding, is take dollars, and we saw this in the interim funding, specifically giving provisions to smaller lenders so that they can service their clients, because a lot of those small business people are not with Chase or Bank of America or Bank of America Commercial, but they're with Vantage or BDFC or maybe the regional development office in Cochise. They're with those smaller lenders that really have that trusted relationship with some of the smaller small businesses.
A huge thing for me too is I saw a big difference once PayPal, QuickBooks, Cabbage, and some of them non-banking people were able to process loans. And so it made it, I think I spent the first 3 weeks just trying to find a bank that people could actually apply to. And even some of the national banks or some of the bigger banks basically weren't even turned on, for about a week or two until the whole program started. So it really put people behind the 8 ball. And then now we had some of the major banks too, not returning phone calls. And a lot of it just is the volume of traffic that they're getting on these things. It was incredible, but that was a big relief to me once the non-banking people, and there was a couple of banks, that credit unions locally, that we assisted to help them be able to process these that weren't lenders, and once they became, they're processing like crazy a lot of these applications.
And that's really, we had an influx of emails and calls. I'm a former and current, but a former small business guy in Tucson. And my background was in small business. So I had a lot of the restaurants and bars and entertainment venues text and call and Facebook me. And we were, trying to triage the lender situation when that first came out. I first asking, who's your bank? What's your debt ratio with them? What's your relationship with your banker? And trying to navigate that first, because we don't have a relationship with Chase. We're the federal government. We're not going to call it Chase. But really to see the guidelines not be adhered to by some of these larger banks, and not really working for the smaller business clients, really made us triage the situation to where we were having them, if they had a relationship with Chase and couldn't get through, we have them go to BDFC in Tucson or Cabbage. BDFC, and we've heard back from a lot of these small businesses, were able to get funds when they didn't have an account. Local First and Kimber put up a great list of all the local banks in Arizona that were taking new applicants, which was huge for us. So if they could go down that list, find a regional bank, talk to them. If not, BDFC and Cabbage were the next two that we were really looking at. And then, like you said, really seeing some of those newer technology-based processing companies like PayPal come in and say, how do we get the support of a larger lending institution and be the front-end facilitator of this? Because we have a lot of clients that might do mobile payments through us. So, we're some people look at our office or Congress as a whole as being, sometimes it's us being on the phone all day trying to figure it out with them to really try to triage the situation. And then seeing that problem, we were able to get that language into that interim funding bill to really specify local banks and to take out some of that stress that these small businesses were having. And this week I reached out to about 30 more small businesses, and they're able to get through. And that's one of the things we're seeing. So
an interesting thing for me too was as this thing's progressed, a lot of times, I'm not even really going to call this a loan because there was 100% guarantee. And I think some of the banks, not to talk bad about anybody, but I think they were probably, they want to do due diligence and processing, but some of them, they changed forms and added more forms and made the process way more difficult than what it was intended to be. And then the approval part of it too almost got to be ridiculous. And when you really look at it, all they were really needed to do was to verify payroll, and maybe verify some income from tax forms. And I don't know what else you really wanted to verify on that, because it was basically to protect your payroll. What is your payroll if you've got a third party giving you that W-2s?
I heard from ADP that they were having bottleneck issues on getting that information back out to their clients. ADP, a huge company for a lot of Arizona businesses. And a lot of restaurants, I know they use ADP. They're struggling with getting that information back to the small business so that they were at the front of the queue when this opened up. And that was another frustration that I heard was, another bottleneck in the process. And then they would go back out to their lender and they need additional guidance or information.
For me, I'd actually like to see more money thrown back into the disaster loan part versus the payroll protection one.
Same.
Because I think that was actually a better deal for small businesses because they have more expenses than just payroll. And then it was kind of a confusing thing as far as the mortgage interest and rent and utilities, to be able to cover 25%. But on the application, it was really, they were asking you for payroll. And I like to be able to default to the 75% if it was payroll, to then, then we can throw the other 25% into those other two categories. Because we know these people, the interesting one that I'm wondering about, I know the deadline in the past one was the end of this month to bring people back. I haven't really seen any deadlines in the second round of funding, what their deadlines were to be able to bring people back on the payroll, so they're in that 75% compliance. And another one too that was really kind of that they have to spend money in 10 days. A lot of people didn't know that, so that is what it is.
All those small things, and you brought up the EIDL. I thought that was a great program for small businesses that said, and they took the option saying this thing's going to be, maybe they said this thing's going to be 6 months. I'm going to let go all my employees. They can get unemployment, and I need to focus on my rent, utilities. I might, get a letter and be able to get some forbearance or talk to my, some of my debt service and stop some of those payments. But really, I need that money not to focus on my staff, but just operational costs. So when we are allowed to come back, then I can hire. Then I can launch back into my business and be successful. And I'm fine with taking out a 1% loan, and then I'll deal with SBA later, or 375, and deal with SBA later and see what's forgivable and what's not, and what Congress is going to pass down the line.
And a lot of these businesses too, they are not going to bring back 75% of their employees because they're not going to be at full steam. And so that's an interesting thing where the EIDL, actually, you didn't have to do that.
Well, and another thing is, in a lot of businesses, we talk about in their business plan being able to staff up and staff down, right? And so to be able to have that right mix inside their business plan. So if they're ready to, then they bring them on later. But if they have that model right, they were already starting to staff down. And so, tying that to payroll for them doesn't work anyway. They need it for other things. So then they, like you said, Mark, then they are ready to staff up when the time is right.
And, I see it from both sides. I try to, in some of these situations, try to pull myself out of the office that I mentally and put myself small back and really see what the federal government might have been trying, or the administration was trying to do with that, was not overload our state system for unemployment, because that is going to be such a burden. And we know that in Arizona, even now, it's very hard to roll out, even the staffing of getting all those requests into DES, and also the other portal that they have to do for the federal dollars to come to the people that were laid off or lost their jobs. To see that and try to make some quick funding mechanism, and they didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So they try to use the funnels that they already had, banks and small businesses, to get that money to the payrolls that really needed it. And for the EIDL, it's something that our office is really trying to stress and be in contact with SBA on, is we're not getting a lot of transparency in that program. We're not getting the responses, and those small businesses that have gone out for it, they haven't received the money. A large swatch of them hasn't received the money, and some have. So looking at the mix of what industries are getting it, who aren't, them changing the $10,000,
to $1,000 per employee,
and then it goes to 1,000 employee. Really calling these businesses back, and it's interesting, because I hear the same thing in tariffs, is that we just give us a level playing field.
Right.
When companies deal with tariffs, they're like, just keep them the same. Stop changing them on me. I'm trying to build my P&L. I need to figure out, just keep it the same. Same with small businesses. They're saying, look, stop moving the goalpost. What is going on, and how do I get this money? And so in that second interim funding bill, not the 2.0, in the interim funding bill, that's where they reallocated money to the PPP program, as well as EIDL. And with the letters that we're sending, and I know a lot of the delegations asking the same questions, is why is Arizona getting a lower amount of money in terms of EIDL and as well as PPP monies into our system for our small businesses.
I know another thing too, I don't want to poke sticks, but I would love to see the list of the banks that did those loans to Harvard University, Princeton, the Los Angeles Lakers. Besides they called out the companies, I'd really like to call out the banks that knew what they were doing and processed those loans. That'd be an interesting thing to see.
Absolutely. And our legislative staff was on the phone with Secretary Mnuchin earlier this week, and that came up. And it was reiterated that he was visibly and vocally very angry about that situation, because they sat down and thoughtfully didn't put together that program for lenders to give larger institutions that money. And we still get requests from large companies and like a lot of members saying, why aren't we included? Well, it's a small business fund. We need it to go to our small businesses, the actual drivers of our economy. There's other mechanisms for other sectors, but this program is meant to help that actual small business that is really the ones that are either going to close, or they're going to be okay and they're going to open.
And the
that's what we're trying to do.
An interesting one too is the program. You always, Monday morning quarterback everything, but it almost incentivized the larger banks to make the loans to their existing customers that they'd had a lending relationship with, because hey, they're going to get 2 months of free payroll. And any company with 2 months of free payroll, especially a larger company, makes them a more solvent company, therefore eligible to pay back the existing loans that they have to the bank. So if I was a banker in their situation, I'd have done the same thing. The program kind of incentivized them to do that. And also too, if I'm making a percentage on the base of the loan, if I'm going to do a $5 million one, a lot easier than doing 100, $5,000 ones or $50,000 ones, whatever it comes out to. So, and nobody, I think, really intended that. You can't think of everything all the time with everything, but I think it's good lessons learned going forward. And I got to talk a little bit too about really nothing but the whole distribution system of everything. I mean, let's just even take a look at those stimulus checks they were supposed to get. You didn't have to fill out any paperwork. They already had your bank routing numbers. And I honestly, I'm not complaining, but I still haven't gotten mine. You know what I mean? And it's probably going to be for a few months. And hey, it comes when it comes. And so I was always telling people, how come I didn't get my PPP money yet, or my EIDL money yet, or my $10,000 emergency advance? And I had to refer them too. Good God, look at that. I mean, you didn't fill any papers out. No one had to look at anything. You just automatically got it. And look how long it took to ever process it. And so that's the sheer volume that we were dealing with that I don't think anybody really understood. You know who we should have probably brought in is maybe Google and Facebook and some of these people that don't have server problems that actually could boost up the servers. You know, I thought maybe we should have brought them in as well as the ventilator people. You know,
and what we're going to see, and we saw this in the first funding bill, and it's especially for a lot of the healthcare companies, because talking with TMC and Banner and El Rio and Chiricahua, they're, you know, some of them are losing millions of dollars a week, and to get them the money that they need to survive, to service our communities, they really had to, and this goes into that mechanism sort of you're talking about, what mechanism that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we can inject cash in and be able to track it on a large national scale. Yeah. How do we get money to every single hospital so that they can pay their bills in an account that we already have, or in a relationship that we already have open to them? And we saw that through HHS. They were able to pinpoint certain things and Medicare payments. And having a mechanism to get and metrics to tie that to say, okay, we're going to give each hospital that deals with this many patients this many dollars per individual, and that mechanism will be used in that interim bill. But they're also looking for that for other areas of the economy. And I think, you know, to your point, that is a massive system to get all that money out to people. But I think we, as the federal government, have an obligation to not, you know, just say we funded this, but really drive it home and be there at the end zone for these small businesses. Because if not, we are going to see a mass closure of businesses throughout, you know, our district and throughout the country. The restaurants, the entertainment venues, bars. We're looking at bars and entertainment venues and not to, you know, negate any other small business, but really they're the last ones that are going to be able to open. Are we able to pinpoint money in those areas? And I've seen a lot of advocacy from small business groups and restaurant associations and bar associations and venues and, you know, the Rialto and historic theaters, really asking for that long-term help. We want to make sure that everybody is taken care of and do it in a responsible way.
An interesting thought that an economist threw out there last week. That's when we were at 26 million unemployment. He said, you know, that's like taking the bottom 23 states in the United States and everybody in those 23 states not working. I mean, that's the sheer volume. You know, that's a lot. Yeah, and then we take a look at the unemployment and all the unemployment offices, not just Arizona, every state in the union, everyone had problems with processing, you know, just from the sheer volume. I think we were getting every 17 seconds a phone call, you know, into ours. They had 17 people normally just, you know, taking care of it. They hired 175 more people. I mean, that's insane numbers when you really think about it. You know, and then now we have software that doesn't even answer or is not written for self-employed people. You know what I mean? Right. And there's just all kinds of problems through all these systems.
And so that's one of the things, you know, we're bringing up some of the stuff in the CARES Act 2.0 that we didn't even see in the interim bill, and that you know, Speaker Pelosi was talking about on a call earlier this week, is looking at supporting 501c6s. And other trade organizations as well. And those, you know, and inside our own little worlds, you know, we were talking to those organizations, but they didn't even know that they weren't covered. So then they come back out and they say, hey, you know, it's the chamber, or, you know, another group, the Tech Council.
I want to bring
we're
this.
Not included.
I want to bring this up too. Is traditionally 501c3s, and I actually process a couple C19s for veteran service organizations, but traditionally they are not eligible for SBA loans because of the guarantor signature. And so I'm not even going to call anybody out, but I actually had some conversations with people that weren't willing to guarantee and didn't want to sign their names on these things, because actually the forms were making them say that they were owner. They weren't. They're just the CFO or the CEO of this particular country or company. And so once again, the forms really weren't laid out specifically to address the nonprofits, and all you're really doing is guaranteeing that the payroll that you sent in was accurate. That was really pretty much what you were guaranteeing, but they weren't so much on the guarantee. They were having problems with signing their name below the line where it says owner or CEO, and they're not.
Along with the social security number.
Yeah. So that's a thing that has to be addressed too going forward. With when you start dealing with nonprofits and including them in the same area as for-profit businesses, with someone willing to say, yeah, I'm signing my line on this because if everything goes wrong, I still have to pay it. It's a loan. This isn't a forgiven, and you can't just forgive it to nobody. Error. I mean, someone has to be held responsible. And are providing accurate information. But
and those are some of the things, and we're all working remotely, but we really see a lot of the letters or other issues that come up from other members of Congress, and we try to sign on to letters that specifically deal with some of those issues that we're seeing in the nonprofit sector, obviously the trade groups, and even the airports. A lot of those things that are really very impacted in a large scale across the country, and making sure that second bill really takes that next step to shore up some of the shortfalls of the first bill. I'll say this a couple times. We're not the CARES Act 2.0 won't be the last stimulus that we're going to see. There's going to have to be a ramp up period to get our country back into some sort of normal operations, and kickstart our economies back into play. But we're going to see Congress come back and really try to develop more and more funding streams to make sure that they can hit some of those shortfalls going forward. This isn't the end for this thing, and especially in Arizona, we saw that. The governor can open on the 12th or 12th and 14th for some businesses, but like we were saying earlier, behind the scenes, if a restaurant opens at 25% capacity, I used to own a restaurant, I'm dead. I'm going out of business, and are people going to come back and hire back right now if they only get 25% or 30% capacity? Or are they going to choose to close to pay on debt service with a loan that they've already taken out and really open 6 months later when they know that the majority of the population is going to come back? We're seeing those decisions sort of being made in the gray area right now between policy and practicality. And we're trying to track that to make sure that some of those later funding bills, hopefully we can get that ramp up to coincide with them as well.
Here's another one too that I had a small business that this is 3 people, mom and dad and the son. Okay, that's who worked in the business. They've been doing it for 25 years. They're the only one in the county that does what they do. Okay, from Wilcox to Benson to Sierra Vista, and I had the mom crying on the phone the other day. They're going to lose their house. Things weren't coming faster, and this whole thing. What really got her when I asked her, "How are you doing with your landlord?" And she says, well, not only did he not, allow us any leeway, but he actually increased the penalty for late payment. And that was, a terrible. That's when she started crying. And I understand, just because I'm a landlord, I got to make payments too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think something probably should maybe be done to take a look at maybe landlords that have loans on buildings and maybe some sort of relief to them so they can pass it down. They can't just say, okay, yeah, free rent, you know, hey, have a great day here. And at the same time, I'd heard from some larger property managers or landlords where they had people that were open doing business when information was released on you don't have to pay it, talking residential, not commercial. And they just says, hey, I'm not going to pay my rent. You know,
and then a lot of the landlords too then are putting that balloon payment in, right? Okay,
yeah,
do that. And so then how do you still make that? Yeah, it's there's not an easy solution to any of this.
No. But I think
there's a couple that I've talked to, and I think say the Gadsden Company in Tucson. It's west of the highway, and what they did was they looked at all their tenants. And they said, we're going to give you 3 months rent reprieve. We're going to put it on the back of your lease. So we're going to give you these 3 months. All we're asking for you to do is to re-sign your lease for those 3 months.
That's very nice.
And I talked to the small, and I talked to the small businesses, and I said, what a practical way to have a relationship with your landlord. And Adam's a good friend. I had that conversation with him. He said it just made sense. I understand what they're going through, but they also understand what I'm going through. And, I think that this goes into the broader question of, or statement saying, we need the state and our localities to also come up with creative solutions, not just the federal government on every single one of these things to help our small businesses, but really see what community development block grant money could do. What does transportation or tourism dollars do? Let's re-engage our communities like Tombstone with tourism dollars or support in some of these areas. Why doesn't the governor come in and talk about freezing mortgages and rents or creative solutions with a lot of these larger leases or landowners? Those are the things that we want to see on different parts of the government, and we're seeing some of it. But still that small business person, it may happen for one person, it may not happen for another person. We really need to see that a blanket policy come over so that it's a level playing field for everybody.
Here's another one too.
Is there yet? I think so much of what's happening now is still being done with rescue in mind, which is what we need for right now. But at some
it's triage.
We'll have to shift to recovery.
Right.
You have to start thinking about what about January 2021, where we know we need to figure out how to make it through the rest of this year or the next 3 months. But we also have to think and plan and get outside the box and come up with those creative solutions for the recovery, because that phase is going to last significantly longer than where we are right now. I love what you said that they're doing in Tucson, because that's the kind of innovative thinking that I think we're going to have to add to the tradition and the kind of the proven models that we know will work. We have to infuse it with innovation in a variety of ways in order to kind of sustain for the long term.
Right. And the city of Tucson is building a resiliency fund. Rio Nuevo, larger taxing district, is giving out grants for small businesses. It's good to see that tiering effect, come in as support for those businesses. So if you're in the county over here, you might not get some of those same mechanisms, but let's figure out what's over there too. Let's work with the county. They're using their IDA. The Tucson's using their IDA. Everybody's trying to do a little bit, come in somewhere to fill a gap. And the one thing that there is communication between, there's strong communication between the county and the city, but really coming together in a larger sense for Southern Arizona and the state, and making sure that we're not overlapping, but we're also trying to fill those gaps for everybody, in every situation. Ag's one of them too. A lot of people don't see in our district. We think Tucson and Sierra Vista, but if you're from down here, you'll go buy alfalfa and cotton and pistachios and pecans and wine. We also look at that as well as a huge part of our district and trade in Arizona is how, and the Congresswoman sits on the Ag Committee, and a lot of her concerns are what is our agricultural producers, knowing that small farms, and she's a huge background in the state, knowing that small farms have already been on the back burner and that are closing. How do we support them in this downturn? Where in the supply chain, and these are conversations that she's having right now, is where in the supply chain can we support them? Maybe to donate their food to the food bank, or maybe get it into another mechanism to help. And that's a lot of the things that I don't think everybody looks at, but it's something of concern for us, because we know what the budget constraints are for the county, or Cochise County. We know that sales tax in that area is going to be regulation. Wilcox and Benson, what are they looking at? So,
and here's time for my little lecture. I love the thing that you said, don't always be looking for the government bailout. There's some things you need to do yourself, and me and Mignon have talked about this a lot. If you're a small business and you're paying people that are contract workers and they're really employees, you're not paying yourself wages, you're not producing the proper financial statements, you need to really take a serious look at. Now is the time to maybe start doing this. It's like wipe the slate clean and start running your business like you're supposed to run it as a business. And there's opportunities out there right now too. And I'm not saying abandon your landlord, but there's going to be some awesome leases that are going to be available. And maybe it's time you might be able to relocate, or maybe even start remodeling your business if you have the funds to be able to do it, to remodel to what it's going to be when you open up, knowing it's not going to be the same. So those are some other help yourself.
I see Skip's comment saying agribusiness plays a very big part in the economy in rural Arizona. Absolutely. Even in our small operation as a family, I'm looking at automating certain processes. We're on drip irrigation, looking at different cover crop management, all those sort of things. But, not just, being able to direct funds so that I don't have a long-term 30-year debt service when I get out of this thing, but that I can really innovate. And a lot of the questions around USDA and the Congresswoman was on a call with Sonny Perdue. Really, some of the things that they're asking is, what funds are there for our specialty crops as well as agriculture in Arizona, so that they can get a grant or short-term loan or an innovation loan to transition some of those things in this time. I know a lot of banks are not looking to lend. It's very hard to get an ag loan for a lot of producers. So I tried to get 2 of them shot down, and I'm and
you almost have to be turned down to be eligible to get one in a lot of their programs. Here's another thing too, really interesting, how important agriculture is. I know when I first started doing this, Sierra Vista overwhelmingly had more business licenses than any other municipality or any other city or town in the state. But guess where number 2 was? Wilcox. They're all farmers, and their businesses too. And this was based off of the IRS, income tax returns sent in from businesses. So Wilcox, was number 2 is business licenses in Cochise County. It's
a huge dairy. We have Coronado Dairy with 150,000 head of cattle. We have Zamudio Farms, small farms. We have larger alfalfa fields. We have the pecans. We have Golden Rule pecans and wine. We have the wine industry. We have a lot of we have Bonita bean. There's a lot of industries that are down there, and many more that contribute large parts of our economy. That they go on a truck and then they leave, and people don't really see that in their homes, but we see it, on the ground.
It's like that dairy in Wilcox. They use more electricity than Fort Echuca. And I was like, that can't be right. And I checked it out, and it was right. It's good. It's a huge operation. It's the first time we could say we've got more cows than people in the county. And it's not like I just drove through Texas, and boy, you can smell the cows. I've been at that farm. You do not smell. They have processes.
I don't know where they find their Febreze, but man, they must have a lot of it.
It's a chemical process that actually, goes into, and they actually refeed, the manure back to the cows because there's hay and straw inside it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's chemical and science.
We've got a question about Billy, about the grants that you mentioned for Tucson businesses. Colette is asking, do those grants have stipulations? For example, if will a business get denied the grant if they have the ability to ship to virtual sales? So basically, if they have another method of, I guess, earning money, does that disqualify them from getting the grants that you mentioned that are available in Tucson?
Yeah, and that would be through the Resiliency Fund from the city of Tucson, I believe. And I talked to the mayor and her chief of staff last week. The city council is going through some of those provisions, so they're really trying to make it sure so it doesn't bottleneck businesses, but also includes a lot of people. They've funded it. I believe it's at $500,000 right now, and they're looking to fund that program a lot more. But they haven't released those qualifications yet. So looking for a fund like that or the those grants, I would go to connecttucson.com and talk to one of the business navigators that the city has employed. So now I think they have 7 business navigators. Before I use a resource, I like to call and test them out, see if they'll actually respond. They responded in the same day. So I would go to them, ask specifically about your business and see what resource they have and really get on their radar about, the needs for your small business.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Skip also posted, he said, try looking into Main Street funds as well. There are a lot of opportunities out there that people just aren't even aware of. We talk about the PPP and the EIDL, but there's also state funding and city programs that are available as well for small businesses.
And this is the part that I like to tell people as well. The federal government came up with the stimulus, and everybody, will look at EIDL and PPP and the stimulus checks. That wasn't it. So, it also went to states and localities and counties. Pima County, will get funds. City of Tucson will get funds. The Cochise County and all the cities will get funds underneath the state. And it's really, I'd like to say, if you aren't one of these smaller cities in Cochise County and even Pima County, please, if this is your first time, call your city councilman or call your mayor and say, what is your plan to get those funds from the state? Because those funds from the state need to come to the smaller cities. That federal dollar needs to trickle down to the state and needs to get into Wilcox, Bisbee, Tombstone, Arivaca, Benson, and really get into the hands of the small business people. And those could be Main Street funds. Those could be funds to help some of those small businesses that are in a different pot of money, but still came from the same source.
Right.
So
a lot of them come to those community block grant funds that are coming down. A lot of the communities are using those dollars and then setting up grant programs or loan programs for the businesses. And that's the hospital again for my mom. So I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much, Billy. Appreciate
your mom's okay.
Bye.
You're welcome, Mignon.
Bye.
Bye.
I know Douglas is one of our communities because of the border town and the reliance for the last several years on trade from Mexico, and border crossing. So they've been hurt pretty bad, from and it was even before the corona. I mean, their traffic has been down quite a bit from people crossing, so.
It's our office and the Congresswoman's in touch with Doreen Watson and Mayor Uribe constantly. So, we, even before this, one of the big, and again, for people just signing on, the Congresswoman's on appropriations. So one of the 4 select committees, the House of Representatives. And one of the things that we've really been trying to bolster is the support for the port project in Douglas. And so that's really where we really want to get back to committee work and start talking about these funding bills so that we can advocate for that community while we're dealing with this crisis at the same time. Congress can walk and chew gum at the same time. We really want to get back to that work. Our whole staff, though we are triaging the situation, and I think we're doing hopefully a great job from our offices. But the Congresswoman is, she is on it, and she's trying to get, that regular committee work back so that we can get funding to some of these projects to advocate for those areas. Over the weekend, I talked to one of the developers from the Agua Prieta side, and he's like, man, we really want to see this project going. Where do you see this down the pipeline? And I'm like, I told them the same thing. We really want to make sure that committee work starts again so that we can start advocating for a lot of these things that are that we've been working on so tirelessly. That is really hard to get a port and GSA money. It's one of our top priorities, and we're really trying to make that happen for Cochise County.
I think a big thing with Cochise County too, you look at reliance on Fort Echuca. I mean, it's the big giant, and it's low hanging fruit. It's there. Tourism is number 2, and then we have some agriculture things going on. But something we have nothing is manufacturing, and I think there's some opportunities in manufacturing in the realm of what is going on right now that maybe we can take advantage of. Or I've been on this ever since the recycling. Good God, there's got to be something we can make out of recycled materials here. A lot of our places even quit taking it. Where do you have as a business where they're going to bring you, here's the product, to make something out of it? I mean, you can almost charge them to dump it, and that's what they're doing. And
right.
Some task force on recycling manufacturing, I think, would be huge.
Yeah, there's I look at the mix of trade and manufacturing that we have with our southern partner, knowing that Mexico is our largest trading partner. And a lot of the work that the Congresswoman's done for bipartisan or binational support with Mexico, trade with Mexico, is really in that light. But also, we'd love to see that from the counties and the state, is to have that relationship, that manufacturing relationship. Tucson has a lot of those subcontractors. They have advanced manufacturing. What else could we bring into the county around Sierra Vista or Douglas or even ag, out of Wilcox or Benson? What can we see to support those communities? And hopefully they take some of that community development block grant money and really put it into a good use for some of those areas. I know you guys are doing great work in Sierra Vista with some of the defense stuff. I know some of the projects in Benson, but we would really like to see a lot more of that. I love touring Tucson stuff, but highest and best use. What can we do in Cochise County? And I think,
and we haven't really taken advantage of the opportunity zones that we have. We have several of them, in our county, as well as free trade zones. And these are 2 huge opportunities that we have that we haven't really taken advantage of. Because I know a lot of the people that fund the opportunity zones really aren't aware of some, I don't want to say the ability that we have with our proximity to Mexico that actually can bolster manufacturing because of that, even as a supply chain form. I mean, if you buy a product from China, 6% of it came from the United States. If you buy a product made from Mexico, 40% of that product originated from the United States in some way. And so even if we're bolster the supply chain of products to Mexico to make something made to have it come back, I think is something that we should really seriously take a look at.
Yeah, and definitely, one of the opportunity zones lies a stone's throw from the port in Douglas. And I've heard from the mayor in Douglas, they're looking at those things as well, to possibly put in a manufacturing side on that part to go back and forth. A part, if I'm looking at a pen, it might go back and forth over the border 5 or 6 times before it actually comes to a U.S. store or vice versa. And, I think you're right. I think that's another thing that, we would like to see as well, is to really build that manufacturing base. And it's not a short-term fix. It's a long-term play to stabilize regional economies. And really build that relationship.
Another one too, I've always been is the whole Amazon warehouses. One ended up in Tucson. Great, but if you ask them right now, in Douglas we have an airport, okay, and they're going to have to fly these things in and out of there. And now they're asking the Tucson airport, hey, can I take off with my plane now? If you go to relocate in Douglas, you control the sky. you're going to determine when you want to land planes or take off and anything. I think that's a huge advantage that we have over that airspace in areas like that, because geographically, once again, that whole Douglas is almost like Kansas City in the United States, with the logistical geographic position being more centrally located to markets in Mexico. So it's a huge advantage we have that sometimes we don't talk enough about.
Yeah, and absolutely. You know, the city manager in Douglas, Doreen, brought this up and contacted our office about 6 months ago regarding, and this gets into, you know, federal government comes in different areas. You know, they were talking about water supply for Bisbee Douglas International, so BDI. How did, you know, they have BDI, and then, you know, Border Patrol, and then the fort, and, you know, they're already at a certain water capacity right now. How do they access some federal funds to redo that water infrastructure so they can get water back out to BDI and be able to serve their residential customers? You know, that's just one thing to support maybe a project at BDI that we're able to do, is look for grants from, you know, the North American Development Bank, or, you know, International Boundary Water Commission, or other federal programs or state programs, to send to them and really say, this would support your long-term project, because I know that you might not have the local funds to put $13 million into new pipes, because you want to put that into buildings. And so that's really where, you know, our office comes into play again, is being creative with some of these federal solutions that are already there, and really allowing our office to act as a really good cheerleader for a lot of these smaller areas, and saying, hey, you know, we'll sign a letter of support all day long. We'll help you find the grants. You guys write them, and we'll be there to help you cut the ribbon, because we know how important this is. So, you know, hopefully we see a lot of that stuff happen in Cochise County. I know Ed Gilligan is trying to be creative in the county, and really, you know, find solutions that are going to make sense. And, you know, we want to support that. And you said something that really hits home for me, is tourism. With this downturn, how are we going to kick on tourism in Southern Arizona? Our birding population, huge tourism driver. Bisbee, massive. Bisbee's shut down right now. I went through it the other day. It you know, just sent chills down my arm, because I was looking for the coffee guy, that's the Bisbee roaster that's always down there, and I couldn't find him. And, you know, that was my one tell, and I'm like, you know, it just hurts. You know, in other areas, you know, that's what our office is trying to do, is trying to, you know, make sure that we look at these areas and say, you know, if we're talking to the state, is the state putting money from the stimulus into tourism? You know, are we focusing on these things that make sense? And are we able to advocate? And, you know, the Congresswoman, we talked to her yesterday, you know, and she's really concerned about this, is, you know, are we able to get people what they need to, you know, to see them in a year and be able to go to their small business? So,
right.
Yeah. So there's a lot of opportunities with different things. I know I had a group that they were working on the whole saline water thing. You know, we're 60 miles, you know, from the ocean, you know, and there's all kinds of problems and technologies that needs to be developed before something like this launches into. But imagine if we could pump that water to our soil, and imagine the crops we could grow here. I mean, there's a lot of land surrounding Douglas. If it just had water, it'd be incredible. And you know, so there's some huge projects, but like I say, there's some major science that needs to go into doing stuff like that to get rid of the saline solutions that you get from it.
Yeah, and on that one, you know, we Congress and the Congresswoman was able to fully fund the Land and Water Conservation Fund, and to really get that water back into those aquifers. You know, we're able to restore grasslands, and if anybody's been through an Arizona monsoon, knowing billions of gallons of water is dumped, we need to recharge those aquifers that are in our system. You know, we have you know, Ag and Wilcox, you know, that basin aquifer system. You know, I have a well that's 700 feet. We need to be able to make sure that those residents that have a well at 200 feet are able to access that water And that's why she signed on, and Congress passed that bill, is to really get that water infrastructure there so that people can live out their lives in the county, because there's no DCP there, right? There's no big pipe. It doesn't go past Tucson. We're trying to be creative in where we advocate.
So here's a question I have: what can we do to help you? But you don't hear that one very often.
Yeah. You know what? Favorite question of the day, honestly. The thing that, we scratch our heads a lot in our office, not because we're not working, but because, we do a lot of advocacy and going out to groups or cities, counties, small places, small businesses, anywhere. And people still don't know that they can just come and email our office and ask us, to support something. We love writing letters of recommendation or helping people in the district. That's our whole job. That's our whole office's job. It's not just, and the Congresswoman does a great job at advocating on a national level. We have 15 or 16 employees and we do constituent services. We deal with federal problems. We help navigate the federal government so that you don't have to. And we really try to help. And so that's the one thing I would say is, if you have anybody that has an issue with the federal government, even now through COVID or Social Security or any of that, have them contact our office. Always let us know if there's an event. If you're a small business and you have a ribbon cutting, or if you want the Congresswoman to come by, or if you want staff to come by, let us know. We are, we're here for constituents. That's our whole job. And we really like to be out there and really know what's in the district and get to know you and know some of the issues. We can't advocate for issues in the district if we don't know about them. And so we really, my job is outreach, and Alicia Ash, who was Mayor Pro Tem in Sierra Vista, is my counterpart in Cochise County. She knows everybody down there. I know this many people down there. And she does a great job for our office, but we still want to know, what is happening, and to contact our office. We can write letters of rec, we can do a lot of things, but we just want to be of help. So, if anything that you can do, please share us to your group and anybody that needs help.
Well, I am definitely going to share the Contact Us page from the Congresswoman's website with all of the information, with the Tucson office and the Sierra Vista office contact information. Heather Floyd said Alicia is wonderful.
Yeah, she's amazing. And all those resources I went over in this, it's actually on our website as well. So Connect Tucson, we put that in there, the lenders list, SBA resources. Alicia or I will reach out to anybody that requests anything. And yeah, we're here to help.
Well, this has been we've been on for over an hour.
Doesn't seem like it went by quick. Yeah, it really did.
It's been a really good conversation. Billy, thank you so much. Go ahead, Mark.
In closing, for me, I want to say, if you're a small business out there and you're having trouble, you know what I mean? Let's just say it's something with your EIDL, something with your PPP, or something with your emergency advance loan, or something with your business. Please call me. I'm here to help you. And that's kind of the main thing I want to get across is these programs are up, they're working, a lot of people are being funded. Be patient. I think that's the biggest thing now is it takes a long time to process these things, and people are working hard to do it. There's piles of paperwork that they're trying to get through. Imagine processing 3 million applications. You know what I mean? So it's just incredible, what is being done. Sad it's not enough. We always want more, faster. But I think now is the time to be patient and to seriously be thinking about your business and what you can do to improve it. This whole thing I always say is instead of working in your business, now is the time to work on it. So take a serious look. Monique is like the marketing guru from planet Earth. Please contact her. You need to be marketing. It's my second favorite line is half the money I spend on advertising is a total waste. My problem is I don't know which half is the total waste. Monique can help you with that. But anyway, in closing, that's kind of what I'd like to say. And I want to thank Billy once again, too, for coming on the show. And definitely, it's the first time I've met you, Billy. I can see some conversations going forward to develop a better relationship with you, so we can work on some of these programs, and maybe there's something we could come up to bring some sort of a manufacturing, to our county. It's kind of like that fourth cog that we really need.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to have that conversation, and you know where to find me. Mignon knows where to find me. Monique, it was once again, pleasure to meet you as well. I hope that we all, after social distancing, after we're all safe, I hope we can come down to Sierra Vista and really have an in-person conversation and really get the ball rolling on a lot of these things that we all, advocate for and know we can change.
Definitely. This has been so good. Thank you so much, Billy. We know you're busy. We know it. And just being able to take some time.
We have time for everybody. So
we appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you that are watching. This has been a really good episode. If you're catching this on the replay, still drop your questions in the comments. We know how to get in touch with Billy, so we'll get you answers. And keep in mind that we also in Sierra Vista have Alicia Ash she's our Billy for Sierra Vista. So we can always reach out to Congresswoman Kirkpatrick's office that's right here in our city. So again, thank you all so much for watching. If there are questions, resources that you need, support that you need, do not hesitate to reach out. Mark's contact information will be shared along with Mignon, so you can reach out to them directly and get help, get your questions answered. Thank you all again so much. Mignon.
One more thing.
What's that?
Is I want to put Monique on the spot for next week's show and the content. Is because we're getting closer to opening, and maybe we can center the theme around marketing. What do I need to do? Some simple little 1, 2, 3 things that all these small businesses can actually start implementing. So it looks like, you never know. But it looks like, in a few weeks, we're going to have to really seriously be thinking about, I'm going back to that thing and I'm opening it up. And what could I be doing now to generate so that faucet isn't dripping? Maybe we can get a drizzle out of it,
And last thing, and how to be safe. So a lot of those provisions that I think people might glance over is making sure that you're putting in, talking to whatever janitorial supply or supplier that making sure that you get PPE as well as cleaning supplies for your business.
Yeah,
one of the things that I think with this opening, if it's going to be a large bottleneck in that industry, make sure that you put your orders in now for 2 or 3 week lead time, because right now we have a month lead time in Tucson. Make sure you have that long-term thinking. Don't leave it. Don't think it's going to be on the shelf in Walmart, because we've all gone to that Walmart and it's not there. So think about it now, stock up for it, and really have a plan to open and just check it off your list.
Yeah, it's really good advice. You're so right. Everybody's going to be looking for that, for those equipments and things like that, all at the same time. So it definitely makes sense to plan ahead. All right. This has been a great conversation. Thank you all. Thanks, Mignon. We will see you all next week on Ask M&N, which will be episode 6. We'll talk about
sad part of the show, the end.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.